Alrighty, it is noon and we are now recording. Hello and welcome back to Welty at Home, the slow reading virtual book club that alternates works by Eudora Welty with works by authors related to Welty. My name is Anna Traylor and I'm the Special Projects Coordinator at Eudora Welty House and Garden. And today we are beginning our first series exploring Welty's correspondence in the collection titled Meanwhile There Are Letters, co-edited by Suzanne Mars and Tom Nolan. As always, we are so grateful to Suzanne, Eudora's friend and biographer and professor emerita at Millsaps College, for leading these discussions. Today, we will start with the introduction and chapter 1 and continue reading one chapter each week until our final discussion on Eudora's birthday, April 13th. And we will have a 2-week spring break on Mondays, March 9 and 16. Before we get started, just some quick housekeeping. To comment or ask a question, click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand. If you are on a phone or an iPad, you might have to tap the screen for this option to appear, and a lively discussion often takes place in the chat, so be sure to glance over at that every now and again. And I also collect those weekly chat transcripts to publish at the end of our series. But if you would like access to that working document, please email info@eudoraweltyhouse.com. And with that, Suzanne, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, I want to introduce two people who are with us today before I start. And one is Tom Nolan, who in his childhood was known as Little Tommy Nolan. He was a child actor and appeared with Ronald Reagan and Ward Bond and others in Westerns and maybe in others. Tom can tell us. Tom is a distinguished book reviewer of mystery fiction for the Wall Street Journal. He's the author of a book about my husband's favorite band leader, Artie Shaw, and the biographer of Ross Macdonald. More importantly for us, he's also the editor of the 2 Library of America volumes of Ross Macdonald's work. And I'm a great admirer of Tom's knowledge and his research skills and his prose style and his ability to work with me on this project. Meanwhile, There Are Letters, the book that we jointly edited. The other person here is responsible for this book too. Her name is Mary Alice White. She is Mary Alice Welty White, Eudora's niece, the first director of the Eudora Welty House, and a person I depend upon for advice all the time. And Mary Alice and I are the last 2 of the last standing who work daily on Eudora, I think, and who knew Eudora as well. Mary Alice, as for her whole life, as Eudora's niece. So let me talk out a little bit about this book before we begin our discussion. I first found out about these letters from Reynolds Price, who I was having lunch with, and he had encouraged me to write a biography of Eudora, and he said, and when you're writing that biography, you need to be sure to read her correspondence with Ross Macdonald. And I said, what correspondence? And he told me about it. And so then, thanks to Mary Alice, I was able to read it and to draw upon it in writing my biography of Eudora. Tom Nolan, some years before, had published his biography of Ross Macdonald and had interviewed Eudora for that biography and had a wonderful interview with her about her experiences knowing Kenneth Miller, Ross Macdonald. So in 2006, I think it was, I was at the Virginia Festival of the Book, and the gentleman came up to me and introduced himself as Tom Nolan and said he thought we ought to do a book of letters. And I thought that was a great idea. And so we began to plan at that time for a book of letters between Ross Macdonald and Eudora Welty. But I was already committed to doing another book of letters, which is called What There Is to Say We Have Said, Eudora's Letters with William Maxwell. So we had to delay the start of our project for 5 years, I think. Then we were able to start in 2011. And to transcribe, Tom transcribed all of Ross Macdonald's letters. I transcribed all of Eudora's. We set about annotating them and putting them together in this book, writing an introduction, writing introductions for the other chapters. Uh, Eudora, for it was our good luck, was in possession of both sides of the correspondence, and she left both sides of that correspondence to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. The reason she had both sides was that after Ken Miller died, his good friend and rare book seller, Ralph Sipper, Joseph the Provider, uh, had purchased his papers from Ken's widow, Margaret, and he was driving by the house one day and he saw that they were about to somebody was about to tear down the pool house. And he went in, and Tom, correct me if I get this wrong, but he went in and he found a stash of letters in the pool house that Ken had evidently hidden, uh, thinking his wife might resent his cherishing of these letters. And so he saved them, and he got on a plane and he brought them to Eudora. And so she had both sides of the correspondence, which she considered burning at one point. And Reynolds Price convinced her, I think among others people's, but mainly Reynolds convinced her not to do so. So that's why we have, thank goodness, these wonderful letters. And I want to just say one more thing, and this is a quote from Eudora about letters and the importance of letters. She loved reading them too, and she had reviewed books of letters, book of Virginia Woolf's letters, for instance. Here's what she said: all letters, old and new, are the still existing parts of a life. To read them now is to be present when some discovery of truth, or perhaps untruth, some flash of light is just occurring. It is clamorous with the moment's happiness or pain. To come upon a personal truth of a human being, however little known and now gone forever, is in some way to admit him to our friendship. What we've been told need not be momentous, but it can be as good as receiving the daring glance from some very bright eye, still mischievous and still mischief making, arriving from 50 or 100 years ago. So the still existing parts of a life, and to be admitted into the friendship of a person, that's what she says it is to read letters. So I wonder what you all think. Are we admitted into the friendship of these two writers? Do you feel admitted into that friendship? And how would you characterize that friendship? So let's start out. Does anyone have any comments? I know somebody does. Who is that?
that? It's me chuckling.
Oh, good. Go.
It's Tom. Oh, there's someone else. Here's a hand. I'll butt out.
Beverly, would you like to?
Okay, so we'll start with Beverly, then we'll come back to Tom.
Um, I was enchanted from the very beginning, from the very first letter, how it all came about. And we don't want to jump ahead, I'm sure, but how the correspondence came about and how absolutely natural it was. There was not, at this point, they had not met each other, but to me, there was really no holding back. I thought these people were meant to be together. I thought they were beautiful.
I think it's interesting, yeah, there's no holding back to tell what he says to her about his daughter's death
Mm-hmm.
before they've met is kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
About Laura.
Yeah, I'm enchanted, as I think is the perfect word that Beverly used. I felt like you're just immediately in the middle of this conversation that we see the beginning of it, but it's like it had been going on
Mm-hmm.
already. These two people that have so much in common and so many connections. And I loved it took me to the end of the first chapter to realize that it's sort of this harmony. And I love how there was the sort of musical like that tinkle that then
Tinkle,
continued,
the
and then
gong, yeah.
the gong. Yeah. And I realized that it was this harmony that just, there's this sort of, yeah, musicality in their connection.
Hey, Pearl, I'm so happy to see you.
I'm so happy to see all of you, great friends and readers. I think rereading it for today, and I'm so looking forward to our times together. I was thinking about how reading some letters, whether it be a correspondence back and forth or it be just one person's letters, it can feel voyeuristic. Because like, ooh, should you be understanding this level of intimacy or, know that particular fact? But with these letters, it's like we are being welcomed in just the same way we are with both of their fictions. And so it was just wonderful to share in that discovery. And hopefully all of us have some soulmate that we also can communicate with or have communicated with in the past. But it also put me to shame about the kinds of ridiculous letters I may or may not have written. Or maybe it can inspire me to write better letters in the future, which I don't think I can, but we'll see. But anyway, I loved the intimacy of it and being let into, oh, and this is in sync. Oh, this is a closing of a circle. Oh, you told me about this. Let me tell you about this. Without any hesitation. They were absolutely free with expressing themselves. And I think that's what each of them relished about the relationship.
Eudora often didn't respond to letters. She had piles of mail she hadn't responded to. She always responded to these in a timely fashion. Yeah. Harriet.
Yeah, I was thinking a couple of things. One is, how we do know each other through reading, and how these are two people who knew each other because they've been reading each other for years, and that's an illusion that you know the author, but in this case, it becomes that. And two, I was thinking about the voices in the letters. I'm already. Nobody would be surprised to find out I'm a Eudora Welty fan, but a Ross Macdonald fan is something, or a Ken Millar fan is something that I came to through these letters that are so sweet and flirty, and this voice is, I think this first of these early letters, Ken is maybe more captivating than Eudora, and then two, I was thinking about that moment in the letters when Eudora says, the fact is, I'm the worst correspondent I know. If you go by the carton standing around my room full of unanswered mail, I have to say, oh my, this is the worst correspondent in the world. When we have all these thousands of letters that she wrote, and they are so informing and we are writing emails today, not letters, and the loss. But the idea, but the fact that she is surrounded by letters that she doesn't respond to while she is writing the thousands that she does, but she responds to his immediately. This is a relationship that she wants to keep going.
Yeah, she recognized the connection immediately. Tom, let me bring you in now and see what you wanted to say. This is Tom Nolan, my co-author.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to put faces to bylines and meet new people, and great to see everybody. Well, the letters, yes, they're extraordinary. I remember when Suzanne and I met, and I asked her, if Ken's letters were, if she thought both sides of the letters were worth collecting, and she assured me they're good letters. Suzanne doesn't waste any words in emails, texts, in person, and that was good enough for me. I sensed the conviction and the information she was giving me, and when I saw the letters, my goodness, the grammar and authority and intelligence and humanity were in there, and the magic, the way they expressed themselves. They constructed letters, but they're spontaneous. They just had enough. They had so much craft and practice at writing, and Eudora's letters are so. Her grammar is so interesting and personal, and it's formal, and but so humane. And I blather on, but her letters are extraordinary. So are his, and their styles are different, but they're complementary, and they really had a kinship. And the more I read them, I've been reading over some. They don't get stale. They always hit you right away with the emotional punch.
Thanks, Tom. Monica?
Well, I just had a question about what just seems like their magical first meeting at the Algonquin. Y'all write about how it was friends of Ken and editors who let him know, hey, Eudora Welty is at the Algonquin. Do y'all know anything else about like what prompted them to poke at him and tell him to go meet Miss Welty?
I think it had been prompted first of all by that New Yorker interview with Walter Clemens and the review that she wrote, because they knew what a fan she was of Walter Clemens, John Leonard at the New York Times, and so when they knew that both of them were there, they let him know. He had written to her, but the letter hadn't gotten to her yet, so she wasn't looking for him at that point. Tom may.
Ray Sokolov was another member of the trio, I think, that was in on locating him and telling him where Miss Welty was. They were the members of the so-called conspiracy, the Ross Macdonald conspiracy, to get him much wider coverage for his whatever book it was that came out, starting with The Goodbye Look and then the following. So they were in touch with him, and they knew about the letters, and they made sure that he knew that she was in town also.
Anything else?
Suzanne?
Yeah.
I can't find my hand to raise, but so I'm just interrupting. The only thing I can contribute, I remember, and I thought it was on a postcard, or maybe I heard it, or my mother said it, but I remember Eudora saying how excited she met the most wonderful person in New York when she was staying at the Algonquin. And I have read through those postcards, I bet 10 times, and that must be my memory. Maybe my mother said it, I don't know, but I do remember that distinctly.
Oh, that's great to know. And I think also that way back in the 40s, I think Eudora had sent, I may have this title confused, your father, when he was in the Navy, a mystery to read. And I think it was maybe one by Margaret Miller. So I'm not sure about that, but there's that connection, I think, going way back. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that is mentioned I'm trying to read ahead, and I believe there's that confluence mentioned about like Walter and Ken having been in the war at the same time in chapter 2. So to see future about that. Another friend here cannot find her hand to raise. So Jane Smith, would you like to say something so we don't overlook your comment? Oh, we have the hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I did finally find the hand. I am just fascinated by this book. For some reason, I thought it would be very different than it actually is, but it is quite literary. And plus, there are so many avenues to explore as I'm reading this book. First of all, I have to say I am woefully ignorant of Ross Macdonald. the only thing I really knew about him was I used to work at a bookstore when I was very young in college, and this man came in and bought his books by the dozens. But I have to say, I have never read any of his books, and I'm looking forward to expanding to more exploring into his writings, because he seems like a very, very well written man. I am really enjoying his style of speech and his wonderful descriptions of what he's writing in these letters to Eudora Welty. And not only that, I am also interested in more about, especially through chapter 1, the other writers that are being talked about. I had never heard of most of them, and this is a really eye-opening book for me. So thank you for having it in the discussion.
Oh, see,
there's an excellent biography of Ross Macdonald that you can consult also. and I love that we were able to find a photograph of Miss Welty on the very day that she met Ken. A few hours later, after this photograph on the New York City street was taken of her with the shopping bag from whatever store she had just been at.
I'll say a couple of things. The next book we do in this book club is going to be, I think, The Underground Man, unless you want a different Ross Macdonald novel, but we'll do a Ross Macdonald novel next. The other thing is that the whole business about Ford Madox Ford, of course, is just fascinating. And the fact that Eudora has been asked to write a review of a biography of Ford Madox Ford by Arthur Meisner. And as she points out, that when she was a young writer in 1939, Catherine Ann Porter enlisted Ford Madox Ford to try to help Eudora. And he did, tried to find a publisher for her, to no avail, but a great kindness he had done her. And then she doesn't mention it, but in 1954, when she's at Cambridge at the American Studies Conference in Cambridge in England, Arthur Meisner is there at the same time, the biographer of Ford Madox Ford that she so dislikes. And Arthur Meisner denigrates E.M. Forster's novel, A Passage to India, and infuriates Eudora, infuriates her. And she meets Forster at that time, and she venerates him, and Meisner has criticized him. So there's that in the background too. And now he is disregarding the genius of Ford. So she has these things against him and tries to be as fair as she can in reading the biography. But I think Tom and I would agree with this assessment from Kenneth Miller. That is that biographers should write about figures they love or at least warmly hate. I think is that the expression. So you want to have some emotion involved, and she thought Meisner had none. So I'll stop there, and I think it's Monica, Pearl, and Harriet. Oh, and Marcia. Okay, have I got it in the right order here?
I just wanted to hear more about the description of their meeting in Algonquin just sounds so magical. And then especially given what emerges in the letters about, her developing the notion of confluence, along with all of it. I love their meeting. Somebody mentioned it that they do seem fated in some sort of way.
Yeah. He says it. I think we're both fey, he says. Pearl.
Well, first of all, it was magical. And I love the little line that Suzanne and Tom put in there. And now their rooms were adjoining or next to one another. Just like nice little touch there. And I wanted to respond to Jane and her comment about learning about other writers, but specifically about Ken Miller, Ross Macdonald. And to me, and I'm sure Suzanne could speak to this much better, but I think that Welty would have been so delighted with that comment, because she always liked to let the light shine on someone else. And if she could have participated in that, then that was a joy to her, I think. The way she told Michael Kraling, oh, yes, you write about Dermot, let him have some shine for author and agent. And I want to just stick in here one personal note that it's so lucky that I did get a letter back from Eudora Welty. And it was my same exact piece of paper that was annotated all along the sides. No, this is not correct. No, why would you think that? Not at all. So I cherished that letter, and now I realize how special it was that she answered it all.
I have one where she wrote in the margin, "You
Yeah.
and Michael Kraling are wrong."
Well, it's good to know when you're wrong.
Well, it's good. She was right too. We were wrong. Harriet and then Marcia.
Yeah, I was thinking about for the writers, the stories of other writers. They're also this is their friends community, and they're beginning to merge them. I mean, there's you kind of follow. They're telling each other about friends, and then as the letters go on, they're connecting with those other friends, discovering they both know William J. Smith, and discovering that Reynolds Price is somebody that Ken Millar is going to know, and these kind of overlapping communities. But the other thing I wanted to pick up on was the whole thread of biography and attitudes towards biography in this first chapter, which is for us, Suzanne, is a frame of knowing you as the biographer that Welty would trust to do the work while she was so very suspicious of biography. And I'm moving from her thinking, and I think it's her who says that biographers should write about figures they love or at least warmly hate.
Ken.
To her discussion of Zelda and Misner, not Misner, Mitford, writing about the Fitzgeralds and old battlefields. And she says she writes like a witness, but she wasn't. It must be wonderfully factual, but it still may not be true. That sense of, and moving right through to, the memoir quality of her photographs and Ken's recognition of that and encouraging her to think about writing autobiography while she wants to put that down, and her discussion of the Optimist's Daughter as a piece that she has struggled with because it is something that she is thinking about, both its connection to life and how there are things that are sad that you can maybe make into something in fiction, respond to in fiction, and I'm thinking about her, Chestina's death, her mother's death, and its place in that story. So I just think it's a thread all through here. And it's also we're just full of her sense that when she's talking about Mitford, she says it's everybody should take the lesson of burning their letters, and thank goodness she didn't. But the temptation was there as she felt that these biographies were violations.
Yeah, she said that about the Zelda biography.
Yeah.
And also she says that she thinks the biographer there is taking life as equals art and not talking about how the writer uses the material from his life and transforms it, but wants to make them equivalent. And she really objects to that. And that's a key point for her, I think. Marcia.
Well, I have a personal reaction, but it's the fact that there's so much literature discussed in the letters in the first chapter. And I was really struck because in 1971, at the very time that she and Miller were discussing Ford Madox Ford, I was reading the Parisian tetralogy. And it was so exciting to me because I just adored Ford Madox Ford from the beginning. I read The Good Soldier a few years later, but I loved that tetralogy so much that knowing that I shared that with these two fabulous writers, it was such a personal connection. And I'm sure others felt the same way when I read about their long discussion about Tender is the Night and the man who had written about that. You think, oh, I can share. I loved that book, and I can share this knowledge and love of it with these wonderful, fabulous people. It gives you a connection to the world of literature that you wouldn't have otherwise.
I gave them a connection to each other that they wouldn't have had otherwise, too, I think. Yeah. And Tim Miller saying, I feel part of literary history, and talking about how he went to graduate school and then began writing mysteries, but he wanted to go back subterraneously and come out with the dark dripping from him, to merge the genres, and another thing that makes you.
And then the other book, when I got to the part about her writing about the Underground Man, of course I bought it, and I'm really enjoying it.
And that whole question of genre breaking is a really interesting one, I think. Pearl.
Tom wanted to say something first.
Okay, go, Tom.
I was just going to note, as far as biography, Ken believed in it and said something like, the more we can learn about a writer, the more we can love them, so to speak.
The opposite of Eudora, but who read biographies? Yeah, go, Pearl.
I don't have all my books with me, but Welty had the same perspective about loving what you're writing about when she was reviewing the different books about Isaac Dinesen, for example, and
Right.
the same comments about letters when she was reviewing William Faulkner's selected letters. Like we got the business of Faulkner from those selected letters. We didn't get the man, kind of thing. And what else was I going to say here? I forget. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Oh, no, I know. We might think about her comments about not burning letters when we think about The Optimist's Daughter, which she is writing at the same time. And the question of burning those letters always comes up in the discussion of Optimist's Daughter. So just maybe, I don't have the brain power to think that through, but there it is.
Yeah, she doesn't. Laurel burns the letters, but Eudora does not. Yeah. Does anyone want us to talk about any specific letters? Any specific letters you'd like us to consider? I'm really interested in the ones about the Optimist's Daughter and A Still Moment, and the link between the Optimist's Daughter and A Still Moment. Does anybody want to go there? Eudora sends Ken a copy of A Still Moment. I think it's after she has sent him the story of the convergence of the Mississippi and Ohio at Cairo. And that convergence, let me see if I've got the page number, I think is on page 20. I hope I'm right. Yeah, she sent him a little booklet that was put out to publicize A Curtain of Green, and there's a picture of her on the cover in a camellia house. And she tells him about that, and she says that when she found this little booklet, it sparked this memory. That was the day, finding this, that the memory of Cairo came back to me, Cairo, Illinois. It was once when I was going north on the train, and it was running away off schedule, so that we went through Cairo by daylight, the one time for me, and I could see from the bridge. It's the high railroad bridge and long trestle over a wide reach where the Ohio and the Mississippi, and I believe a little local river too, all come together. It took a long time to cross it, and the train went slowly, and while we were still on it, I saw high up in the light a long ragged V of birds flying south with the river. I kept hearing in my head all the way that beautiful word confluence, the confluence of the waters, Everything the eyes could see was like the word happening. I don't remember that there were any houses or roads or people anywhere, but treetops and water and distance and sky and birds and confluence. It may not be so rare, but I thought so then, and I do now. It's all so rarely the blessing falls. So this key passage when she revises The Optimist's Daughter from the New Yorker version and adds this passage comes back to her while she's corresponding with Kenneth Miller. Pearl, did you have?
Well, I was going to say, yes, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to know. But then it's so curious in the sense that she sends him a still moment, which has different kind of confluence, or I think she more likely uses the word convergence there. And that she, again, doesn't think the story is successful, but they have a beautiful correspondence about it. I thought, well, why didn't I have those letters when I was writing my thesis on that story? And I love how
stranger,
how she doesn't hold back with her typical, what I think of as modesty, but she says, oh yes, they all kept journals and I read them all. And I know that to be true because I read them all also to write that thesis. And it's just a lovely illustration of how like minds can see another like mind and enrich each other that way.
Thinking surely about the convergence of her life with his.
Yes.
That confluence. And then sending him this memory of confluence, and then sending him a story about the confluence of three very different lives. I thought it's interesting that she called the story a failure too. I mean, this is the one Robert Penn Warren said was his favorite of her stories. Yeah. So, Harriet.
Yeah, well, and he even says this is an idea that could go into fiction, and that it does, as she brings it into the Optimist's Daughter. But I was also tickled to read his birder response to A Still Moment. We don't know yet how much he is a bird watcher, and that he understands Audubon as somebody who would kill the bird, and that was going to be the outcome no matter what happened here, and so he gets a little stuck in his response to the story on that.
Yeah, he said, of course, but she says the bird didn't have to die, and he said, well, Audubon would have killed it. Yeah. He knows that.
He's going to study it.
Yeah. He also says the story baffles him, and it is a very mysterious kind of story. And I remember when my sister was going to teach it to her class, she said, what Welty story should I teach? I said, teach A Still Moment. And then she assigned it before she read it. Then after she read it, she called me up and said, what the hell is going on? So I had to try to help her out. There you go. Beverly.
I'm going to preface this with a little story, and then that'll explain what I'm going to say about the letters here. When the house was first opening, I was there to work as a docent one day, and there weren't going to be any people. It was a day kind of like this. And so I got to go up to Eudora's bedroom with a sheet of the books that were up there and the white gloves and catalog. Well, I fell down the rabbit hole because I kept pulling them out and reading the inscriptions. And one of the things that I noticed right away, the inscriptions of the books from Kenneth Miller, Ross Macdonald, the inscriptions got pretty quickly much more intimate than the first one, like, Dear Miss Welty. And it's the same thing with these letters. If you look at the closings, we're signing them love pretty quickly, both of them, which I think also speaks to how close their relationship was, friendship, romance, whatever you want to call it. But we move from yours sincerely or something along those lines to love always, love Ken, love Eudora. And I was, again, pretty enchanted by that. They didn't have a lot of time to waste at their age, so they were moving fast.
I think Tom is the one who pointed out that the slowness, the letters were fairly intimate when they were still signing them, still referring to each other as Miss Welty and Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
Change. Tom.
Okay, pardon my light here. I love this is a letter from April 71 that Ken writes. When I got your letter today, something went through me like a vibration of light, as if I had had a responsive echo from a distant star, as if a half-imagined relationship to the great past had come real in my life before my life ended. It came down to me through you. This is signed, as always, Kim. And her next letter is yours ever. But they did... that form of expression, I always think is so extraordinary, and that was pretty near the early, and it had to do with Ford and so forth. But I just love the grace and elegance of both their styles, and which became more intimate and as their correspondence continued.
I think it's actually because their work perfect. Jane.
I am having to read this book on a digital edition, and it's very hard to find page numbers and places. But what did come to my mind, and I was so glad that I think in your editorial comments in the book, they talked about that story about and I can't remember the name of the story that she wrote, about the man and the woman who had met together at a hotel in Louisiana.
No Place for You, My Love, Eudora's story, written years before she met Kenneth Miller. Yeah.
That I couldn't help but think of that story about them traveling through the southern part of Louisiana and then meeting at the little bar and then dancing. That was very interesting to me.
I have to say, I'm the one that came up with that story to mention. And when I read that in my own introduction, I thought, how good of me. I was right proud.
Was it in the introduction that was written? Because I know I read it, but I can't find it in the digital copy that I have.
It's not mentioned in the letters, but it's mentioned in our introduction. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a quick note before we move on, I see a comment here in the chat from Melissa. Her question is, for those who knew Eudora, do these letters reflect her true voice? That is there any sense of restraint? Is she using a version of her more formal or writer voice, or a voice she used with friends and family?
What do you think, Mary Alice? We can't hear
There
you.
we go. There we go. Oh, now when I read them, I mean, it just sounds like Eudora. I mean, I could hear her voice. I thought it was very authentic.
I thought so too. I mean, Eudora, when she talked about a fiction and imagining yourself into lives not your own, and that comes through. And Kenneth Miller did that too, and that bound them together, and they were imagining themselves into each other's lives. And I felt that it was authentic. Now, Tom interviewed Eudora. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, that was the wonderful thing about speaking with her. That spontaneity that reflected her own writing style, but was so genuine and quick to respond to everything. And his letters to her, I think, are much more personal and intimate, if you will, than his letters to other people. And I read a lot of them. He had lots of correspondence. I'm wondering, Suzanne, did you feel that her letters to him were somewhat different from her letters to other people?
Her letters to, we have some feedback. I think it's over. Her letters to, I mean, she had very, I think, very natural, unforced letters to lots of people, to Frank Lyle, to Reynolds Price, to Dermot Russell, to Mary Lou Aswell. But they're of a different. The tone is different. It's as if what you say depends on the person you're talking to some extent, the kind of ease. I think there's ease in all of them, but there's a kind of intimacy here that I don't know, that seems unique, I think. Pearl, what do you think?
I think you're right that they are different in that you can feel the sense of wonder at the discovery of this like mind and the newness of it. When she's writing to Frank Lyle, they have a long history, and so they've built up this sort of shorthand that they tell each other and what they're talking about. But when she's writing to Ken, it's like, wow, I just can't believe this came into my life at this time, and I'm going to tell you about this because I know you'll love it.
It's like, to me, sometimes it's like she keeps touching him on his forearm. Listen to this, listen to this.
I think that's right. The wonder of that is there. By the way, Eudora very rarely did she ever revise a letter. She wrote it and sent it. And so these are, there's no evidence. I've only seen a couple of letters in the collection that she revised. And they would have been ones that she was worried about sending. These were all very spontaneous, I think. Yeah, Harriet.
Yeah, I put my hand down, but I was thinking that that there you do have a sense of the different Eudora in her different letters to different people. That is, that the voice for Frank Lyle is different than this voice, and it's just a sense of different relationships bringing out different aspects of her personality. Mary Lou's letters, I mean, they're all a little different. And it's wonderful to see these different sides of her in different relationships.
And of course, we speak differently to different people, just of course.
I'd love to chime in here on this. My first collection of correspondence that I read of Eudora's was the Tell About Night Flowers collection, the ones that's predominantly about her gardens. And those are to John Robinson as well as Dearman Russell, of course. And I see a similar forthrightness, vulnerability, a spontaneity. But what's different about this one is that she's receiving that back too. And I think that encourages it so much more. I think what you see in her letters with John is a start and stop, a start and stop. She gets there and then feels the need to restrain, to pull back. And also those are one-sided. Those are just Eudora's letters. And so we don't see the other side of the conversation in that collection. And that's why I felt so the wonder is such a good way to put it. She seems almost breathless whenever they have the surprise meeting at the Algonquin. And it's like a romantic comedy. It's got me giggling and kicking my feet. It's truly so, so sweet.
Yeah, John's letters she did burn, so we don't have those letters for the most part. We have a few. So it would be, but I think you're right, Anne. I suspect that his letters were far more restrained than Ken's, that she got that response from Ken that she was not getting from John. Pearl and then Monica.
Another difference to the letters to John Robinson and the letters to Ken is the way she writes about writing. She was, so eager to try to help John become a successful writer. when maybe that's not really what he wanted. And with Ken, it's like, oh, I'm so happy you're back in your writing, back in your book, but it's never like how to do it or I'll try to get you published. They meet each other at just the right time for one aspect of their relationship.
Yeah, yeah, she was more a mentor to John in terms of writing and with Ken. And I think that's one of the wonderful things is she treats him and felt that he was her peer. There's no disdain for the mystery genre here. There's a respect for the genre, uh, as he was, Monica.
Yeah, I love getting to read writers talking to other writers as equals, as peers. My question, the first time that I read this, I went and after I read it, I went and got Margaret Miller's book about birds. How into bird watching was Eudora before they became friends?
Well, Mary Alice can speak better to this maybe, but I would say not much. I mean, she was aware of the birds. She did want a cat because she didn't want the cats killing the birds in the
But they were hardcore.
yard. But they were hardcore. They counted birds. They were part of the bird count. And
Yeah, like I said, I went and I read Margaret Miller's book.
yeah, so I don't think Eudora was ever that serious about it. She was like
Had enough to write the shoebird. Like the shoebird is full of birds.
yeah, she did write the shoebird.
Yeah.
She was not out with binoculars on the Natchez Trace looking for birds, but she was an appreciator of birds, a lover of birds. Yeah. Mary Alice may have had to leave. I don't know. Let's see. Must have. Okay. Too bad. Susan, you remember anything? We can't hear you. Nope. I'm glad Susan knew I was which
Okay,
Susan.
that's right, Susan. I'm with, I'm sorry, I've got this on the phone. Feedback. She was so into her garden, and the garden had bird baths, and she appreciated, because there's some gardening things that depend on when the birds come and what they're going to eat, but she did not know all the names and count and all that. So I think it was more than the average person, but it had to do with the garden.
Yeah. Tom?
I don't know. I don't know anything about her birding or non-birding, but it seemed to me she was interested in all animals. So I think she was interested in squirrels that tore the pine cones off the trees as much as she was birds and snakes, and there's references to all kinds of animal life. And Ken and Maggie too were interested, but Ken especially loved all animals, and used to, when he was living in Canada as a young man, he would go to the park, and there was a squirrel there that he sort of tamed and would feed, and actually would feed from his mouth. His wife wrote in disgust. So.
Of course, Eudora's novels are full of bird imagery. Harriet.
I was going to say about the Robinson letters that, I think that what Pearl said, that the Robinson letters are just so full of her sense of wanting to have a relationship with someone else who is writing, that she tries to make John into the writer who will be her partner in those letters. And I think that that we feel that again in her excitement of corresponding with Ken, that what the thing that they share is writing. I do think that she, in some ways, made a difference actually in Ross Macdonald's career with that review, and that the review just hit at the right moment, and that it's also full of a sense of her what she has to say about Archer and Archer's development, and his vulnerability, and it makes me think that that Ken actually listens to that and maybe takes it forward as he goes on writing Archer, but that that she makes a difference in his career with that letter. I thought that the Wilfred Sheed review and their letters back and forth about it were worth talking about as Eudora is unhappy for Ken. Feels that it's been the review has been a threat and an offense, and of course it's not only for him, it's also for her. He's talking about her review and how she's making a mountain out of a genre that is not literary enough. And I just loved Ken's response and the tone that he sets as he says, if you wanted to damage me, I would have had to be much clearer and better informed, which he's capable of. She's enormous contempt for the detective story shielded me. He didn't really think it was worth his while. And I think that's just right. But, then he goes on to talk about how he forced me to choose between my good opinion of him and my good opinion of myself. And don't be upset because I'd rather be mentioned controversially than not mentioned at all. What a winning letter that is in terms of his response to that nasty review, which is a review that is, I think, about the mystery genre more than it is just about Ross Macdonald.
Yes, and it's also Wilfred Sheed, I think, trying to claim a territory for himself as a writer. My genre is better than your genre, sort of um, response. I think we have a sense that both Eudora and Ken wanted to have this kind of relationship with a fellow writer. That was so important to them that that they could have this sort of exchange. And she never could have that with John, but she could with Kenneth Miller. Jane, did you have something? Am I seeing a hand up from you?
I just wanted to remark, and this is in response to some comments made up a little while ago about the language back and forth between Eudora and Ross Macdonald is I think this would make a great film. I think between the tensions that's there between this unmarried spinster writer and this married man, that the tension between them, the language between them, I think it would make a great film to put that into perspective. I've only read through the first chapter, so I can't really say, but I think it have definite possibilities. I could see it, especially since letter writing nowadays is so archaic. No one does that anymore. Thought it would be very interesting.
All right.
Well, excuse me, there was a play that was written by an Irishman who came to California, a mystery writer, Declan. And that was performed in Santa Barbara on 2 evenings. I was there both times. And the letters play, the way the whole thing was structured, a little bit of Margaret included. It was a good thing to do, and it works. It works.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I didn't get to see that. What was the name of that writer, Tom? Do you remember? I'll find out. We'll find out and let you know. I will Pearl, and then Pearl, Harriet, then I have one more thing. Go ahead.
I think that your comment about these two writers seeking one another is really apt. And it also points out how perhaps Ken and Maggie were that couple early on, and how they separated. I mean, he explains that they separated, and we're going to see more of that as we read more of the letters and come to know her a little bit better. And that's kind of a sad tragedy for Ken, I think, that he had something together. They had hopes, and they did work together on some things, but then diverged in many, many other ways. I think, and I don't know if you want to save this for when we read Underground Man, but it might be useful and interesting to post a copy of Welty's review of Underground Man from the New York Times.
And it is available in The Eye of the Story, if you have that book. Tom, I thought you might want to say something about the relationship Ken and Maggie.
Well, that you mentioned earlier on that it was in the earlier years it was more collaborative and collegial in the writerly sense, but he was still involved with her writing. He always read her books first, her manuscripts, and she his, and he wrote the jacket copy, I believe, for all of her books from the beginning until the end. And they would comment on each other's books, but it's true that they did grow apart in those ways. All you can say, I think, is contained in my book. Please, consult that for a lot of stuff about Maggie. I know someone who's writing a book about Maggie now, a young woman from the University of Kentucky, a Kentucky-related university. And she was a fine writer, and she found her own way pretty early, by like the fourth or fifth book. And he gave her all credit for everything after that. It's an interesting story, and Suzanne is as capable of addressing it as I.
Hardly. Harriet, did you have something?
I wanted to say that the one other letter I wanted to talk about was her letter to Margaret.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to bring up.
And I just think that Margaret made such a mistake by not responding, and it makes us wonder, about what is going on in her head that she didn't respond. But here Eudora writes this essentially nonfiction piece for an audience of one. This amazing letter about where she creates Fanny Cook as a character, and she essentially writes an essay, a delightful Welty piece for Margaret, and then Margaret doesn't respond, and I think I keep thinking about how different the course of things would have been if she had responded, because Eudora is inviting her to be the kind of correspondent with her that Ken is, and to have a relationship with the two of them, and she doesn't take her up on the offer. Yeah.
Well, if I may, Maggie was a very different sort of correspondent and everything else from Ken. She didn't really have correspondences with people. She didn't keep letters. She didn't keep anything. She threw everything away. Ken always kept everything. And Maggie did write a letter to Miss Welty at one point. Maggie had stopped writing for a few years after her daughter died, their daughter. And then Maggie came out to Miss Welty came to the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, and Maggie said she inspired her to, and there may have been the aspect of Ken's friendship with Miss Welty also that inspired her to begin writing again. But she wrote a nice letter to Miss Welty about that and thanked her for inspiring her. And yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think that point that this is also a grief period for Ken and Margaret, and that they're dealing with it differently. That it is, I'm going through this with another friend, and she doesn't want to be on social media or it's a lot to go through, and And the moment when Ken comes back and says, this year, these letters have been really important to me in this period, is moving. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it is a kind of foreshadowing of what is to come that she doesn't respond. I mean, it is a great letter. If I'd gotten that letter about Fanny Cook, I'd have been out running around the block. And I would have enjoyed it so much. But it's the timing of it, I think is more important. But I did want to call your attention to that letter because I thought it was a wonderful piece from Eudora. It's, as Harriet says, like a little essay in itself. And yeah, and it's Ken apologizes for Margaret not responding. Yeah. Anna, you want to take over?
Yes, unfortunately, we have surpassed our time for the day. We are about 5 minutes after on our wintry Monday first discussion back. It's so exciting to see so much interest in this. And I have heard the requests for a opportunity to continue this discussion on social media. So I have made a Welty at Home group. This is a private group that we can begin these discussion or continue these discussions if you want. I'm going to drop a link that should, when you click it, it should give you an invitation to join this group. So hopefully that works out. We'll trial this for this series if you are interested in that discussion outside of Zoom. Until then, we will see each other again next week. One more thing from Suzanne. Did you have something?
I hope you're aware of the notes at the back of the book, and I hope, I'm sorry that they're not as easily accessible as they might be. Maybe Xeroxing them would be a good idea. If you find something you think needs to be noted that we didn't note, bring that up and we can try to address that. If we know, we'll answer. So we can add to the notes as we go along.
I'm sure some folks are using the digital version. I am also using a digital version that can help you move back and forth between the notes and the chapters very easily. If that is the case, the best way to find the letter that we are talking about is through the date of the letter, Eudora Welty to Kenneth Miller on this date, rather than the page numbers, since those shift. So just bearing those things in mind, I hope to see you guys in the Facebook discussion and again next Monday at noon. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you all. Bye.